BodyBags, where horror lies.
Hey guys, Rob from Georgia here with you again. This is week 338, and this may be really relevant in more than one ways, but this week I'm going to take a look at the South Korean disaster film from 2013 by Jang-su Kim, and really deals with it's an infection film, and the consequences of seeing something like this on a massive scale begin to just bloom outward, and is quite a scary film. But I say relevant. We all know people are all really sort of freaked out about the whole coronavirus, and maybe the worst part about this is we don't even really know just how bad things are in China, considering the political system and how much information they're willing to give out ever. We may never know the total fatality count, but it's interesting when you listen to some of the reports of what it may be like in China. You watch a movie like Flu, and you can't help to think and wonder, are we not seeing in some semblance perhaps what could be happening in China? But yet this film takes place in South Korea, in fact in Bundang, which is a province, more like a suburb of Seoul, South Korea, right? And the other relevance part is my whole family's sick, and so if I end up coughing, whatever, please excuse me, but it just, the whole house, the kids, everyone, it's just terrible. But anyways, Blue. So I thought this was pretty timely to take a look. But like any South Korean film, man, this movie, it works in ways that you seldom, and I'll say maybe with the exception of Contagion, rarely do you see movies just work on such a human degree. I was just checking out a small little making of, and you just see some of the interactions between the director and the little girl, Miru, that we'll get to know, and just the interactions on set are just so, I don't know, it's just so human, so compassionate, and it really does come through in the film, and as most South Korean films. But anyways, this is my CJ release DVD of Flu. I've had this for a while now, and I'm not sure, I've just been waiting on taking a look at it, and so really what you have here is due to a human trafficking smuggling operation, you get a container full of people that are being smuggled in to the Bundang province, and there's two brothers who their job to go intercept this container to get the people out. But when they open it, they realize that this container basically is, everyone in there is dead, and it's a mess. It's absolutely frightful scene when those doors open up. But there's one, Monsai, there's one in there that has survived, and he is able to escape and get away from them. And so there begins the beginnings of this flu-like. It's an H5N1 is what they call it, and they believe because of the circumstances within the container, it's mutated to effect that it can kill within 36 hours. And when it begins to spread, it's about 500,000 people in Bundang. But the fear is because they're so close to Seoul that if they can't contain this thing, it's gonna blow out of proportions, and millions are going to die as a result. But anyway, so that's sort of the catalyst, right? Is this human trafficking operation, and but really at the heart of the story are just a couple characters. Jigu, who he's an emergency response team, and he will have an interaction with Inhai, who is another major relevant character. She's a medical researcher, but we're opened up at the beginning of the film. She has had a terrible accident where she has somehow gotten her car down into this this construction shaft. He arrives, and he's one of the ones who's there rescuing her out of her car, but she leaves something behind and is able to convince him why he needs to go back on his own time and retrieve this, her purse that has some vital information that she needs, work-related. And so really, you begin with this catalyst of characters, and really you got the brothers who are involved in this human trafficking operation. You got Miru, who is the daughter of Inhai. She's the medical researcher. As a result of Jigu going back, as he's not supposed to, and retrieving this for her, as he's trying to get the purse back to her, he ends up delivering it to her daughter, and so their interaction begins. And so you really have these three characters are really the core. The two brothers in the operation, and Monsai, who is he is the one who has escaped, but once he is tracked down and found, he's the one who actually has the antibodies initially that can create a vaccine. And so really, it's a human story that is woven in such a way that only South Korean films, it seems like, can do so consistently. And yet it's a disaster film. It's about containment. It's about the value of human life. And when you got like South Korea, makes it really interesting because you've got the confluence of so many organizations, the World Health Organization, of course, which plays a very antagonistic role in here. You've got the Americans, of course, are in there in South Korea. You got the South Koreans, and you just got these moving pieces, and really, who's in control of this movie? And ultimately, in the end, the president is able to sort of dictate the right response. But you get a lot of crazy, like when this virus really starts to break out open, it's almost, I mean, it's scary because you got people who are, you know, driving buses or aircraft or whatever who have fallen ill to this virus, and they die right, you know, there. And so you got, you know, images of planes coming out or buses driving out, trucks driving out of control. And I mean, it's a disaster at the heart of this. This whole population is beginning very quick order to break down. And of course, you know, you start quarantine effect. This is this really interesting notion where, you know, in this day and age of electronic social media and whatnot, the government will ultimately create a blackout. So nobody can use their phones, nobody can use anything like that. That in of itself is kind of a scary thing, that the government could totally just black out everyone. And so really, it creates a fog in the sense that no one really knows what's going on. And so once they create, like at the sports stadium, a quarantine of sorts, rumors start flying that they are taking the infected down below the stadium to where they are basically just killing them because there's no cure, there's no vaccine. And that's where Inhai plays such an important role, is she will ultimately use her own daughter who becomes infected in order to try out an experimental antibody from Monsai. And that story will continue to elevate. And it's like everything, it's like you start off in the beginning, it's like you get these little moving pieces, and then by the end, it's like, you know, coming into a funnel, and everything by the end has come out in a very narrow way that's very powerful. Some very powerful imagery of just how society works, how government responds. You take something on such a small scale like The Crazies by George A. Romero to something this large scale, and you can think what's happening in China at the moment and how that is impacting the globe globally. And you just see some of the images in this movie, you can't help to wonder, are these some of the things? You've heard reports of people just collapsing in the streets in China, and due to this virus, at the source of the contagion, where this virus has broken out. And you see this imagery in this movie, and you can't wonder, wow, that is, it is really the prospect of something like this breaking out is so scary. And how close have we ever really come, not knowing just how close to being on the verge of a complete epidemic of proportions that we can't even begin to fathom. And so, you know, movies like Flu, man, they're done so well. They really make you think just how scary this stuff really is. And we ought to be really thoughtful to some of this stuff as it's happening around the world, especially those impacted in China and even out and about now. You've heard of stories of an ocean liner being in quarantine for weeks. Planes are being quarantined, and you just get these people are getting caught up into this, where government has happened to make decisions that impact people's lives. And so it's an extremely relevant movie for our time, I think, right now. If you've never seen Flu, and there's a good chance you never have, I'm pretty sure it's priming right now, so I think you can see it on Prime. Check it out. Check it out. It is unnerving. It is scary. And if you've ever seen Contagion, you know, there's a way of comparing that up. But do check out Flu 2013, Sung-Soo Kim. Quite a remarkable, very scary film. So at week 338, I bring you some South Korean goodness. And as always, well, theme week next week, right? As always, we leave these things off with, go Bills.